I'd been dreaming about my dog for 8 months. Not in a sentimental way okay, exactly in a sentimental way. But I'd never have admitted it to the guys in my unit. You don't tell a tent full of soldiers that the thing getting you through the worst deployment of your life is the thought of a 70-pound mutt named Tank putting his giant dumb head in your lap. But it was. On the bad nights, the ones I'm not going to describe, I'd close my eyes and think about Tank, and the porch of the little house I'd left him at, and the going home moment, and that's the thing that would put me to sleep. I came home to an empty house. I stood in the driveway at 6 p.m., with my duffel on my shoulder, and the key still in the lock, and the house dark and silent. And the wrongness of it hit me before I even understood it. No nails skittering on the floor. No deep bark. No 70 pounds of dog hurling itself at the door. Just quiet. The specific quiet of a house where nobody and no dog had been waiting. Because, of course, Tank wasn't there. I'd known that. I just hadn't felt times it until I was standing in it. I'm Wyatt Cole. I'm 33. I was an Army staff sergeant, and that tour was my last one. I'd already put in my papers, already decided I was done, ready to come home and build the quiet civilian life I'd been promising myself for years. The plan had a house in it, and a dog, and a porch. The dog and the porch were already mine. I'd bought the little place outside Boise the year before, adopted Tank from the shelter 2 weeks after, this enormous goofy shepherd mix who'd looked at me through the kennel bars like he'd been waiting specifically for me. We'd had 4 months together before the deployment orders came. 4 months. And then I had to leave him. I didn't have family nearby to take him. My parents were gone. My sister had a baby and a dog allergy, and a 70-pound high-energy shepherd is not a thing you can just board for 8 months. So I'd done what soldiers do. I'd found a foster. There's a network for it. People who take military dogs while their handlers deploy. The coordinator had matched me with a woman named Ray Donnelly, who ran a small foster operation out of a place 20 minutes from mine, and who'd agreed to take Tank for the duration. We'd done the handoff over video, mostly, and one rushed in-person drop-off the day before I shipped out me. Frantic, packing, handing over a dog and a binder of instructions, and Tank's specific anxieties, thunderstorms, the vacuum, being left, which was about to get a lot worse. Ray had been kind and competent, and I'd barely registered her as a person, because I was a man about to leave the thing he loved most, and she was the stranger I was leaving him with, and that's all I had room to see. For 8 months she'd sent me updates. That was the deal. Fosters sent photos, videos, the occasional voice memo. And somewhere over those 8 months, Ray Donnelly's updates had become the other thing that got me through. It started practical. Week 1. Tank settling in. 8 finally. He's sleeping by the door. I think he's waiting for you. I'll keep you posted. I read that one about 40 times. He's waiting for you. The updates kept coming. Photos of Tank at the dog park. A video of him losing a fight with a sprinkler. A voice memo, around month 2, of Ray narrating Tank's first successful thunderstorm. She'd built him a blanket fort, apparently, and sat in it with him through the whole storm, and recorded 30 seconds of him snoring through thunder he used to panic at, and she was laughing in the recording, this warm, low laugh, and I played that voice memo so many times in that tent that one of the guys asked if I had a girl back home, and I said something like that without thinking, and then spent a week pretending I hadn't said it. Let me give you the 8 months, because the 8 months are the whole love story, and they happened 30 seconds at a time, on a phone, in a place I'm not allowed to name. Month 1 was practical and a little heartbreaking. He's not eating much. He sleeps by the door. I moved his bed 3 times, and he keeps dragging it back to the door. I think he's waiting. I read that one in a guard tower at 3 a.m. and had to put the phone down. Month 2 was the thunderstorm, the blanket fort, the laugh. That's when it tipped, though I didn't know it yet. That's when the foster became Ray in my head. Month 3, she started sending the commentary. Not just photos, captions, voice memos, a whole running narrative about my dog's interior life. Update: Tank has discovered his reflection in the oven door and has been negotiating with it for 20 minutes. Neither party will back down. I'll keep you posted. I started looking forward to mail call the way I'd looked forward to almost nothing in that place. Month 4, I wrote back more than the update required. Tank had done something funny, and I wrote 3 paragraphs about it. way more than the situation called for, and at the end, I asked her a question that had nothing to do with the dog, how she'd gotten into fostering, and she wrote back 2 paragraphs. And just like that, we weren't doing foster updates anymore. We were having a conversation that happened to have a dog in it. Month 5 was the bad month, the one I'm not going to describe. We lost, it was a hard month. And one night, wrecked. 3 a.m. I wrote Ray something I'd never written anyone, a less sanitized version of where I was, the kind of thing you can only say to someone far enough away to be safe. And she didn't flinch. She didn't do the thing people do. The times, thank you for your service times deflection, the changing of the subject. She just wrote back something exactly right. I still have it. And then she sent a photo of Tank asleep on his back, legs in the air, completely undignified, with the caption times, he's holding your spot. It's a good spot. Come back to it. And I lay in my bunk and cried, quietly, the way you cry in a tent full of other men, and I knew right then. I just couldn't do anything about it from there. Month 6 and 7, we wrote almost every day. About Tank. Around Tank. Then not really about Tank at all. Her divorce. My parents. Gone. The quiet civilian life I was building toward. The house, the porch, I described it to her once, the whole picture. And she wrote back times that sounds like a good life. Wyatt and I lay there realizing the picture had quietly started having her in it. Somewhere at the edges, and I didn't move her out. Month 8, the last one, the countdown. She went a little quiet, shorter updates. I didn't understand it at the time. I'd later learned she'd been dreading the homecoming, the handoff, the day the dog went home, and the reason to talk to me ended. She was pulling back, to protect herself from a goodbye she'd never signed up to feel. I didn't know that. I just knew the updates got shorter, and I missed them, and I told myself I missed them, because I missed Tank, which was true, and also a lie. I never said any of it out loud. Neither did she. It stayed in the safe space of foster updates. 2 people writing to each other across an ocean about a dog. Both of us, I think, telling ourselves it was about the dog. And then my tour ended, and I flew home, and I drove to my empty house and stood in the silent driveway and realized Tank was still at Ray's, because the handoff back wasn't scheduled until the next day, and the house I'd dreamed about for 8 months was just an empty building, and the dog I'd dreamed about was 20 minutes away, with the woman whose voice memos I'd memorized. I got back in the truck. I didn't even put my duffel down. I just drove to Ray's. I should have called first. You don't show up at a stranger's house at 6:30 p.m., unannounced. But I'd been imagining the reunion with Tank for 8 months, and I was not capable, in that moment, of waiting one more night. And some other part of me, the part I wasn't admitting to, was not capable of waiting one more night to put a face to 8 months of voice memos. I knocked. I heard it immediately, the skitter of nails, the deep bark, and then a crash against the inside of the door that could only be 70 pounds of shepherd losing his entire mind. And under it, a woman's voice. Tank, off Tank. I can't open the door if you times Tank. The door opened, and Tank came through it like a missile, and I went down. Just went straight down onto Ray Donnelly's front lawn under 100 he'd gained weight. The traitor pounds of dog who was screaming, actually screaming, the way dogs do when the thing they'd given up on comes back, and licking my face and stepping on my ribs and making a sound I'd never heard a dog make. And I'm not ashamed to say I was crying into his fur on a stranger's lawn. 8 months of held together coming apart all at once. He knew, said a voice above me. I swear to God, he knew. He's been at the window since 4. He doesn't usually, he just times knew. I looked up, and there was Ray. I'd seen photos she was in some of the dog pictures. An arm, a profile, a laughing half face. But I'd never really times looked, because I'd been a man leaving his dog and she'd been the stranger I left him with. Now I looked. Dark hair pulled back, an oversized flannel, dog hair on everything, and an expression on her face that I recognized because it was the same one that had been in the voice memos, warm, a little wry, and right now, cracked open with the same emotion crashing through me. You're early, she said. The handoff's tomorrow. I came home to an empty house, I said, still on the ground, still holding my dog. I couldn't wait till tomorrow. I'm sorry. I should have called. No, she crouched down, ruffling Tank's fur, her hand ending up next to mine in his coat. "No, don't be sorry. He's been waiting for you for 8 months." Her voice did something. He'd run to the door every time a truck went by. Every single truck. 8 months. And I'd have to tell him, "Not yet, buddy. Not yet." She looked at me, and her eyes were wet. He waited. So did I. The lawn went very quiet. Tank, sensing the humans had stopped paying attention to him, flopped dramatically across both our laps. "You waited," I repeated. Ray's cheeks colored, but she didn't take it back. "I told myself for 8 months that the voice memos were about the dog," she said. "I'm not going to keep telling myself that on my own front lawn while you cry into his fur." I waited. "There. I said it. You can be weird about it now. I'm not going to be weird about it. You're a soldier. You're going to be weird about it." "I played the thunderstorm one probably 200 times, I said. "The blanket fort, you laughing. I played it so many times a guy in my unit thought I had a girlfriend back home." My voice was wrecked. I said, "Something like that. Then I felt insane, because you were the foster, and I'd met you once, and I was falling for a woman's voice memos about my dog in a tent." Ray stared at me. Then she laughed the voice memo laugh, the real one. The one I'd memorized, except now it was in person, 3 feet away, and it was so much better in person that something in my chest that had been clenched for 8 months finally let go. "You played the thunderstorm one 200 times, she said. "At least. I re-recorded that one 4 times because I kept laughing wrong." She wiped her eyes. "I wanted it to be a good one. For you. Over there." She shook her head. "I was making good content for a soldier I'd met once, about his dog, and pretending it was just the foster updates." We're both idiots, I agreed. On her lawn, my dog across my lap, 8 months of pretending finally over. We sat on her porch for 4 hours that first night. Tank refused to leave. My side wouldn't even go to Ray, who he'd lived with for 8 months, just glued himself to me, his head in my lap, occasionally lifting it to check. I was still there and then sighing this enormous sigh and putting it back down. "He's making sure you don't leave again," Ray said. "He did this whole when you deployed. He stopped eating for 4 days. I had to hand feed him. He grieved you, Wyatt. Dogs grieve. People don't believe me, but they do." She scratched his ears. "And now you're back, and he's not letting you out of his sight. He's going to be like this for weeks. Fair warning, I'm not planning on leaving again." I put in my papers. "That was my last tour." Ray's hand stilled in Tank's fur. "Your last one. I'm done. Home for good." I looked at her over my dog's head. "That was the plan, you know. The whole thing I was coming home to. The house, the porch, the dog. I built the whole picture in that tent to get through it." I paused. "Somewhere in there the picture started having your voice memos in it. I didn't notice when. But by the end, when I imagined coming home, I wasn't just imagining Tank. I was imagining meeting you. For real. The person. Not the updates. And then you came home to an empty house," she said softly, "and drove straight here. Didn't even put my duffel down. It's still in the truck." I huffed a laugh. 8 months of dreaming about a homecoming, and the first thing I did when I got home was leave again to come find my dog. And, apparently, you. Ray was quiet for a moment, watching Tank breathe. Then she said, "I have to tell you something, and it's going to sound insane, so let me get it out. About a month ago, I caught myself dreading the handoff. The day you'd come back and take him home, that's the whole job, Wyatt. That's what fostering times is. You take care of them, and then you give them back, and you're supposed to be happy about it. That's the win. The dog goes home. I've done it a dozen times. I've never once dreaded it." Her voice dropped. And I realized I wasn't dreading losing Tank. I mean, I was. I love that big idiot. But mostly, I was dreading losing the conversations, the reason to write to you. Because once you took the dog home, what was I going to do? Keep texting a soldier I'd met once. The dog was the only thing that let me talk to you. And I was dreading the day the dog went home because it meant the talking stopped. She looked at me. "So that's where I was. A month ago, before you showed up early and cried on my lawn." I was already grieving the end of a thing I'd never let myself call a thing. I reached over Tank's sleeping body and took her hand. Then we don't end it, I said. The dog goes home to my place, the house with the porch I built this whole picture around. But the talking doesn't stop. The talking moves to in person. That's the whole Ray. That's the entire thing I came home for. I just didn't know your address was part of it until I was standing in my empty house realizing the dog and the woman I'd been falling for were at the same house, 20 minutes away. Her fingers closed around mine. You're sure this isn't homecoming, is a lot. Guys come back and everything's heightened. You're not supposed to make big decisions in the first. I made this decision in a tent 4 months ago, I said. I just couldn't do anything about it until now. This isn't homecoming brain. This is 8 months of being sure and not being able to say it. I held her eyes. I came home for a dog and a porch and a quiet life. Turns out I also came home for you. Took me an empty house to figure out the whole picture. We did it slow. After that, which is funny given that the start was a man collapsing on a lawn. But slow was right. We'd fallen for each other's written selves, the careful, curated voice memo selves, and we both knew there was a difference between that and the real, daily, dog hair on everything person, so we let the real versions catch up to the written ones. Tank made it complicated and easy at the same time. Complicated because he genuinely could not handle being away from me for the first month, separation anxiety the size of a house, the legacy of 8 months of waiting, so any date Ray and I had, Tank had too, which is not romantic. A 70-pound dog wedged between you at a restaurant patio. But easy because Tank was the whole reason. The bridge, the thing that had let two careful people talk to each other for 8 months before either of us was brave enough to mean it. We'd fallen in love through a dog. The dog got to come on the dates. It was only fair. I learned the real Ray, the one the voice memos only hinted at. She'd been married young, to a man who'd wanted her smaller, quieter, less, fewer dogs, fewer opinions, and she'd shrunk for years before she left, and started filling the too quiet house with foster dogs that needed her loud and present and entirely herself. The dogs don't want me smaller, she said. That's the thing about dogs. They want all of you. Tank wanted all of you. 8 months. Every truck that drove by. I'd forgotten people could want you like that. Dogs reminded me. And then she'd shrugged. And then a soldier started writing back more than the updates required, and wanting all of it, the real conversations, the bad nights, the whole thing. And I thought, oh, people can do that too. I just had to find one who didn't want me smaller. I want you exactly this size, I told her. Possibly louder. Definitely with more dogs. More dogs, she said, delighted. He says more dogs. Tank, we're keeping him. The slow part had a real obstacle in it, though, and it wasn't the dog. It was me, about 2 months in, hitting the thing a lot of guys hit coming home. The transition out was harder than I'd told anyone. You spend years in a structure that decides everything when you wake, what you do, who you are, and then you're a civilian in a quiet house, with a porch and a dog and a woman, and the quiet you dreamed about for 8 months turns out to be loud in a different way, full of a stillness you don't have a job to fill anymore. I got restless. I got short. I started pulling back from Ray without meaning to, the way you do when something's wrong inside you and you can't name it. So you make it everyone's problem by going silent. Ray clocked it before I did, because she'd spent 8 months reading me through a phone and knew my quiet the way she knew Tank's. You've gone somewhere, she said one evening, on the porch, Tank between us. You've been going somewhere for a couple weeks, and I've been doing the thing where I tell myself it's nothing, it's the transition, give him space. But I left a marriage where I told myself that for years times, give him space, it's nothing times and I'm not doing it again. So I'm asking, where do you go? And I almost gave her the deflection. The times I'm fine. It's the adjustment. Don't worry about it. The wall. But this was a woman who'd written me back at 3 a.m. on the worst night of my tour and not flinched, who'd held Tank's spot and told me to come back to it, and she deserved better than the wall. I don't know how to be still, I said. That's the honest version. I dreamed about this, the porch, the quiet, the dog. You for 8 months. And now I'm in it, and I don't know what to do with myself because for 12 years, something else always decided what I did with myself. The quiet I wanted feels like I'm waiting for orders that aren't coming. And I get restless, and then I get short, and then I pull back. And I'm doing it to you, and you don't deserve it, and I don't know how to stop. I scrubbed my face. I came home to the thing I wanted, and I'm scared I don't know how to live in it. That's where I go. Right there. Ray was quiet. Then she reached over Tank and took my hand. Okay, she said. First, thank you for not giving me the wall. I felt the wall coming. You gave me the real thing instead. That matters more than you know. She squeezed. Second, you don't have to know how to be still yet. You just got here. Tank didn't know how to be still either. 8 months, he ran to the window at every truck. He had to learn that the waiting was over, that he could put his head down and stay. It took him weeks. He still checks. You saw him do it tonight. The head lift thing. She nodded at the dog. You're allowed to be like Tank. Lift your head, check it's real, put it back down. As many times as you need. I'm not going anywhere. The porch isn't going anywhere. You don't have to fill the quiet with anything. You just have to learn it's safe to stay in it. Her voice softened. That's the whole job now, Wyatt. Not waiting for orders. Just learning that the thing you waited for is allowed to be permanent. I looked at her, and at my dog who'd taught both of us something about waiting and arriving, and I felt the restless thing in my chest ease for the first time since I'd come home. You're good at this, I said. The talking me down thing. I've had practice. Tank's been having an existential crisis for 2 months. You're just a bigger version of the same problem. She bumped my shoulder. My specialty is creatures who waited so long they forgot how to arrive. I run a whole foster operation for them. You're just the first one I married. A beat. Going to marry. Whatever. You knew what I meant. I did know what she meant. And the slip times, married times sat there between us on the porch. Said too early, not taken back, and neither of us moved to fix it, because neither of us wanted to. That was 2 years ago. We have 4 dogs now, which is what happens when a foster and a guy who can't say no to a shepherd's face combine households. Tank is the patriarch, enormous and serene. The dog who waited 8 months and got his person back, and has never once taken it for granted he still checks. Every so often, lifts his head to make sure I'm there, sighs, puts it back down. The vet says it's a trauma thing, and he may always do it. I don't mind. I do the same thing about Ray, honestly. Lift my head, check, she's there, sigh, go back to whatever I was doing. We're both just making sure the thing we waited for didn't disappear. We got married last fall, in the backyard of the house with the porch, the one I'd built the whole homecoming picture around. Tank was the ring bearer, which was a logistical catastrophe. The rings tied to a 70-pound dog who got distracted by a squirrel halfway down the aisle, and it was perfect. And everyone cried, and I have never been happier than I was standing in my own backyard, marrying the woman whose voice memos I'd memorized in a tent. I kept all of them, by the way. The voice memos. 8 months of them. They're saved on a drive tank's first thunderstorm. The sprinkler defeat, the running mailman commentary, all of it. Sometimes Ray catches me listening to one, and rolls her eyes and calls me a sap. And she's right. I am a sap. I'm a sap who spent the worst 8 months of his life falling in love with a woman's voice describing his dog. And I have no regrets, and I'd do the whole tour again if it ended the same way. I think about the empty house a lot. The way I stood in that silent driveway, the homecoming I dreamed of for 8 months turning out to be a dark, quiet, dogless building. For about 30 seconds, it was the loneliest moment of my life, the thing I'd survived for. And it was empty. And then I got back in the truck and drove 20 minutes and found out the homecoming wasn't a house at all. It was a dog who'd waited at a window for 8 months, and a woman who'd waited beside him and had been too scared to call it waiting until I cried on her lawn and made her say it out loud. He waited. So did I. Best 4 words anyone ever said to me. Tank agrees. He told me. He's very communicative now that his person is home for good. What would you have done if you came home from everything to an empty house and found out the thing you'd really been coming home to was 20 minutes away, waiting, the whole time? Have you ever fallen for someone slowly, through letters or messages, or some small daily thread, before you ever let yourself admit it was real? Tell me your story in the comments. And give your dog a treat from me, they wait longer than we ever know. Leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.